Hello and welcome back to the Full 10 Yards Betting Podcast, and welcome into the NFL playoffs. Feels like it's been a while, although in a few weeks we're all going to be missing football for 7, 8, 9 months, whatever it is. But I'm Liam, your host, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Touchdown Tips, aka Adam, this time around. How are you? How are you doing after a sad Sunday for your team because of my team? 3 years in a row, the Bengals have been knocked out by the Chiefs in the playoffs, I think it is.
Oh, very good. And we both lovely to have the weekend off for both of our teams this week as well. Obviously, slightly different reasons for them. Obviously, I thought the Chiefs third stringers might have known how to play football at least, but apparently not. So yeah, it wasn't a surprise to see the Chiefs lose. I just thought they might have actually tried to do something. It seemed very much a get in, get out, don't do anything kind of game. So yeah, it is what it is. We screwed ourselves by losing to the Chargers, to the Ravens, to the Chiefs, to the many one-score losses that the Bengals had over the season. Screwed them. So yeah, it is what it is. I'm looking forward to this weekend, and I can guarantee we would have been the first game of the week. So it's nice that the Texans have taken over the West of us spot, as named by Chris Wessling back in the day. The Texans, I think, have been the 6 o'clock kickoff or the early kickoff for about 8 or 9 times in a row that they've made the playoffs. So yeah, it's no surprise to see them there.
Yeah, I think someone says every time, isn't it? Every time in the wildcard round they've been the early kickoff. But yeah, I do remember those days in the pod as well, hearing about West of us. That was always pretty cool. Yeah. And people don't like him sometimes, but Bill Simmons as well. They always talk about Shakey's game, but they all get together at this terrible pizza place in LA, all of him and his mates, and watch the first playoff game in the worst pizza place in LA that has like 1 star. And then the loser of the fantasy league buys everyone pizza at this terrible place. Yeah. And he was making the joke, like the amount of times I've watched the Texans play in that one pizza restaurant is unheard of. So yeah, the Texans are back in a familiar spot. Last week we were 4 out of 12 in our picks, so we're not going to talk about it. Who cares about week 18 is all we're going to say. And we did warn you consistently, throughout the episode. Probably don't bet on week 18 unless you can find a gem or two. So we'll go into the wildcard weekend. Then I've got a couple of betting trends for people to think about as whether you like our picks or not as you're going towards betting for these set of games. Since 2002, I think teams scoring less than 20 points on the road have lost the last 12 games and are 7 for 44 against the spread. So if you don't think a team can score 20 points on the road this weekend, I don't think you should be betting them. You have to get over 24.5 points on average for a road team to be more than 50% against the spread ever in the wildcard round. So again, you need your teams to be scoring points if they're the road team. And then the one that I found the most interesting, which I think we'll talk about a lot, is road teams. You'd think if they get lots of turnovers, that's a good thing. But if they have 1 or more turnovers in the game, they're still 6 and 13 against the spread. So even when they win the turnover margin by 1, they're still 6 13 in the spread. So yeah, you've got to be very careful when you're betting these road teams and there's some other stats we'll go through later about rookie quarterbacks and stuff. But how are you feeling in general about wildcard weekend before we go game by game? It's my favorite weekend of the year. I prefer it to divisional. My friends prefer divisional, but I like the extra games. How do you feel about wildcard weekend?
I think I normally prefer wildcard weekend, but I'm not a massive fan of the fixtures this week. I think there's some duds this weekend. So it's one I'm not as up for, and maybe because of last week as well, obviously with the Bengals not being there. Maybe I'm just a bit down because of that, but I just feel like there's not the best of matchups this week. I do have a trend though. Strength of schedule. So if your team is 10 or more places worse in the strength of schedule, so we've got that twice this weekend. So you got the 29th place Chargers against the 14th place Texans. So the Texans have the 14th hardest schedule, 29th for the Chargers. The team with the hardest schedule is 32 and 12 against the spread. So generally, the team with the hardest schedule during the season, obviously more battle hardened, they do cover the spread in the playoffs. Not entirely sure what's going to happen in that game, to be honest, but the trend is there for that one. And I believe, I can't remember what the other game was. I'll have to try and remember it while we're going through.
Might be the Bucks, but yeah, that's a good trend. I've got some more as well as we go through. Check us out doing lots of research before we press go live. Beautiful thing. So in terms of format, we are doing it a little bit differently to the normal episodes. We are going to go game by game in order. I'll read out the spread and the total. Then we'll go through our best bets. And then after we've done that, then we'll just talk about the game in general in case we haven't picked the winner of the game. And me and Adam will just give our views on who we think might win. And then we'll do our best bet for that game and talk about any other lines we like. And then we'll move on and we'll just go game by game in chronological order. So that means we're starting with the Chargers at Texans. Chargers are 2.5 favourites on the road. And the under-over is 42.5. Again, my lines are from Sky. If you're watching on YouTube, there's lines flashing across the bottom of the screen. As always, please shop around, get the best lines wherever you can find them. In terms of a trend in this one, home underdogs in the NFL playoffs are currently 6-4 straight up all time since the new format, and they're 8-2 against the spread. So home underdogs 8-2 against the spread is a very good record. May not be a good sign to what I'm about to say in about 3 minutes when it comes to the picks. And then 90% of the money in this game in the States is on the Chargers. So this is the most public spread of the week. No surprise there. However, they only have 2 wins against playoff teams all year, and that is against the Broncos, going back to your strength of schedule thing that you mentioned earlier. So we'll try not to spoil any picks, but in terms of the game in general, there's 6 games to go through, so we're not going to go in too much depth. But how are you feeling about this game in terms of total and spread? Any opinions on that at all for you?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be the most entertaining game in the world. Road favourites of 3 or more, which is what it is in about 365. If you get that kind of instance, it's 0-6 to the under since the change. So yeah, I think it's going to be a fairly tight game. The Falcons have why do I keep saying the Falcons? The the Texans have failed to score 23. Well, they've only scored 23 points in 2 of the last 11 games, so I think it's going to be a fairly low scoring one. I don't entirely know which way it's going to go, to be honest. I think it's going to be quite an interesting one. I think the Chargers should be able to get pressure. The Texans have got the worst offensive line left in the playoffs. They conceded the second most sacks in the league this year, and the Chargers have got a pretty good defense. Although I do think that the Chargers defense is skewed by the fact that they played poor teams this year. They only played, I think, 5 high-scoring teams, and they conceded 27 points each time at least. So I do think that it's a little bit of a mirage that the Chargers defense is that great. However, as I say, I think they'll get pressure up front, and we know the Texans are riddled with injuries on the passing game. Joe Mixon hasn't looked great since he came back from injury, nor is J.K. Dobbins on the other side, to be honest. So I think they kind of cancel each other out. And then you've got Herbert versus Stroud, who are the kind of highlights of the young'uns in the league. It'll be interesting to see who kind of steps up there, because neither has really got a history of stepping up in pressure situations. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I genuinely don't know which way it's going to go. So yeah, it's a tough one to pick.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried it could be a bit ugly overall. Spoke about this on our podcast, but the Chargers will want to get an early lead and then run the ball a lot, because that's Greg Roman, that's Jim Harbaugh, and they will probably win the game if that happens, because that's just what those 2 guys have done in their career. If it becomes back and forth, even if it's back and forth in terms of punts, then we could be in for a bit more of an interesting game. I think if you're neutral, you don't want the Chargers to go up like 13-0 after the first 10, 15 minutes of game time, because I think the game could be a bit of a washout then when it comes to the fun factor. But yeah, 2 top quarterbacks. I really like both of them, especially Herbert, as everyone listeners knows. So I think it should be a fun game. I do think personally that Stroud could play a lot better than people think. I'm not sure the offense will be great. Like you said, Mixon's not been great, but I think Stroud himself could play well in this game. I would probably be leaning the under just from the trends, but I don't think I would personally bet the under. Cool. Let's go through best bets then. We'll start with Tim's selection. He's gone for Ladd McConkey, over 5.5 receptions. He had an incredible game. I don't know if it was last week or the week before when he had those 170 yards, but he's become Justin Herbert's favorite target, I think, against man coverage, which the Texans play a lot of. He sees 33% of targets on my notes, which is a really high number. It's the highest in the team, obviously. Quentin Johnson as well. He's a little bit banged up. I think Josh Palmer's out. So I think we could see a heavy dose of Ladd McConkey. So personally, I think the over 5.5 receptions that Tim's gone for is a really good shout. What have you picked for your best bet? You've gone the other side of the ball.
Yeah, I've gone a little bit left field. It's one I don't normally pick. It's Khalil Mack to have a sack. He was 29 to 20. So you're getting decent odds on him. You're looking at around even money for Joey Bosa, Daniil Hunter, and Will Anderson on the other side. They're both around even money as well. Max only had 6 sacks this year, but as I said before, he is going up against the worst defensive line in the playoffs, and he's going up against a team who've allowed a ton of sacks. And they've not all just been sacks due to the offensive line. It's Stroud's very much been doing what Caleb Williams has been doing, holding on to the ball and getting sacked that way as well. Obviously, with fewer players to aim for, I guess he's trying to make the big plays to Nico Collins, essentially. So yeah, I thought the odds are fairly decent on it, and I think it's going to be a fairly tight defensive game. So I won't be surprised if there's a handful of sacks on both sides. But yeah, the odds were just better on Mac. With regards to the Texans, they do have, I think they're number one in edge win rate against other teams. So I do think that they're going to get pressure on Herbert as well. So it should be an interesting one.
Yeah, I think they will get pressure on him as well. And I know Mack only had 6 sacks, but he was pretty good in all the pressure statistics in terms of rushing the QB and hits. He just didn't have as many sacks as he had. So I think he's a better option than Bosa. Bosa's been banged up, as he always is, in and out all season. So yeah, that's a good shout. For my best bet, I've gone with the spread. I've gone with Chargers -2.5. Now, like I said earlier, I do think CJ Stroud can keep it close. It would not shock me if they won. Even looking at the trends, the home underdog trend we mentioned, the schedule strengthening you mentioned, I would say there's a big chance Texans can win. I don't think they should be 90% of the money on the Chargers. But I do think the defense is playing really well. Jesse Minter's a really good DC. The offensive line for the Chargers has played well this season. And I think Herbert's just playing out of his mind now the last few weeks. And I think this could be the chance where he gets his first playoff win. So yeah, I think it'll be close, but I'm going to go for Chargers -2.5. Anything else you like in that game, or is that it?
No, I would be. I probably will be picking the Texans in my spread contest because I don't think they should be the underdogs by 3, as you say. I think it's going to be fairly tight, and I'd be leaning under just because of the trends we've said. But I'm not entirely confident in either side here, to be honest. So yeah, one I'm staying away from money making purposes.
Yeah, it's one of those close ones that if your bookie you use has 3, I wouldn't bet Chargers. But I just like the fact that I can get 2.5 where it's under the field goal. Cool. So to summarize that game then, I've gone for Chargers, like I said, -2.5 if you can get it. Adam's gone for the Khalil Mack sack, 29 to 20, and then Tim's gone for Lad McConkey over 5.5 receptions. Next game then, the late game on Saturday night is Steelers at Ravens. I think most people I know, this is the least favorite game people look forward to watching. Ravens are favored by, well, it's moving all over the place. So it went all the way to 10.5. It's now back down to 8.5 on Sky and on William Hill. And then the total is 43.5. So yeah, the Ravens have been as high as 10.5. I think you can still get 10 on Virgin as of right now. So it's an interesting spread to bet. I assume you're seeing the line move all over the place as well when you've been looking.
9.5, 10 was all I'd seen. I hadn't seen it going up and down that much. Yeah, the lines I put on the display are Bet365, and yeah, it's +10 on there, 20 to 23. So slight juice on it, but that's the way I'd lean. I'd have to lean Steelers +10. I know they've been absolutely terrible for the last month of the season, and George Pickens had probably the worst game of his career last week. But I do think that games against the Ravens are a different animal in this matchup. It doesn't really seem to matter. Lamar Jackson seems to struggle against Mike Tomlin and the Steelers regardless. I know obviously he's been injured in games against them. He's been kind of coming off injuries and then starting fresh as well. So he's not had the easiest kind of situation for them, but he's never performed that great. He was pretty good last time out, to be fair. And obviously they don't have Zay Flowers this week, which is a huge miss. He's their main guy in the passing game. So I do have to lean to the Steelers getting that many points. Obviously it's quite a low total as well, 43.5. I can see the Steelers getting 17, 18. Generally where they seem to be against the Ravens. Admittedly, I can see the Ravens getting 30 if that goes well for them. But as I say, this matchup just seems to be a bit of a kryptonite for them, and that's the way I'd be leaning on that one. I wouldn't mind watching this one, but it's the 1 a.m. game, so I'm not going to. But
Yeah.
I do think it could be quite a hard-fought one. It's the one that the commentators always love because it's the good old AFC North battle, and they always rave about this one. And the fact that dirty hits aren't dirty hits in the game, this game is just good old-fashioned AFC North football and blah blah blah. So it's a great one for the commentary teams, and it's a great one for the historians of the game, let's say. And yeah, it's probably not the most entertaining, as you say.
Yeah, I think even Josh from our group said he was looking forward to this one a lot. And again, he's an AFC North fan, so it feels like it's in the blood.
Yeah.
If you're from that division, the total's not in my best bet or anyone's best bet, but I actually do like the over 43.5. I don't love many of the totals this week personally, but I do think that's a good over bet, especially like you said, if the Steelers play better than last week and George Pickens actually catches the balls thrown to him, they should get 17 points, 16 to 20. And then again, you'd like to think you can get the over there with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and the tight ends playing as well as they have. In terms of the game overall, Steelers have the lowest points per game of any team left in the playoff, which is a real big worry for that 20-plus point margin. Like I said, if you don't score 20 points, you don't win as an underdog in the wildcard weekend. And they are the lowest points per game. In the last 6 weeks, they're not hitting that 20 mark either. So that'd be a worry for them. And home favourites of more than a touchdown, which you think would be hard to cover in the wildcard round, are 17-1 straight up and 14-4 against the spread since 2005. So you'd think over 7 is hard to get, but over 7 covers a lot of the time. Like these teams are normally fairly priced and quite big mismatches in terms of how good they are. So we'll see if the Steelers can make a dent in that this weekend. Cool. Let's go through best bets then. For Tim, he's gone for Isaiah Likely over 26.5 receiving yards. He's also added another little nugget that he likes Likely over 2.5 receptions, which I think is a good bet, especially if you like over 26.5, because he does have the big reception, but he also gets the dump off from Lamar in the flats as well. So I think over 2.5 receptions for Likely is a good shout as well. Your best bet also is on that line of that player. Let's hope he doesn't get injured in the first quarter.
Yeah, after Tim got his in first, and I was going to go for a likely bet, and he beat me to it with the yards and the receptions. So obviously, I fully agree with those. Obviously, Rashad Bateman should get a fair bit, and 46.5, probably fairly good for him. But I went with the 11-4 and Isaiah Likely to score a touchdown. That's the Sky Bet, so one of the more mainstream bookies. He gets open. He is. They're kind of. I was going to say he's their playmaking tight end. Obviously, Mark Andrews has had a ridiculous run with touchdowns, and he'll just lob it up to him, and he probably will get one as well. I'll probably go on both of them scoring this one. I think Likely is more of a slot receiver, more Mike Gesicki kind of type. So he may get. I think he will get a lot of the work that Zay Flowers might have done. So I do like him at the odds.
Yeah, Steelers are bottom 5 in the NFL against tight ends as well, and they're top 5 against everything else. So it's definitely a weakness of their defense as well in the linebackers and Minkah Fitzpatrick running around trying to get picks rather than cover the tight end sometimes. So yeah, I think that's a good.
You mean all pro Minkah Fitzpatrick, wasn't he?
Yeah,
somehow?
second team was it today? I think. It did
second team all pro. Okay.
Yeah. We're all going for Ravens bets here, similar to the Chargers. I've gone for the spread though. I've gone for Ravens minus 9.5. This one, to be honest, was the one I struggled the most with in terms of we're picking a best bet for every one. I was in an hour whether to go player prop. I quite like the Jalen Warren 18.5 receiving yards or 20.5 receiving yards. I quite like the Bateman line that you said earlier because Zay Flowers is out, and one thing that Bateman does, he's more of a kind of big play. He doesn't get the dump offs like Andrews and Likely does. He gets the big plays. But I've decided to go Ravens minus 9.5 after doing a bit more research. I just think they are the rightful favourites. Steelers are trending in the wrong direction, and the Ravens' offense is on fire. So yeah, I've gone for Ravens minus 9.5. And again, for anyone watching, to summarise, 9.5 for me. But again, you can get 8.5 on Sky Bet, which is crazy. The fact they have 1.5 points different to some of their competitors is quite rare. That only happens in the playoffs. So, yeah, depending on which side of the line you like, you can get 8.5 on Sky. And then Adam's gone for the Isaiah Likely touchdown, 11-4 also on Sky. Then Tim's gone for Likely over 26.5 receiving yards. But Adam also likes that one as well. And then I think 2.5 receptions was the line that everyone likes for likely. Cool. On to Sunday then. The early game: Broncos at Bills. Bills are favoured by 8.5 at the moment. This line's stayed fairly steady, and then 47.5 is the total that I've got on Sky. Denver, obviously very good defense this season, but the two top scoring offenses they played scored 30 and 41 against them respectively, which was Cincinnati and the Ravens. And then the Bills are 20-6 straight up and 21 and 5 against the spread in Josh Allen's era against any top 5 defense. So when they play a top 5 defense, Josh Allen normally plays well, and they normally score a lot of points against those defenses. How are you feeling about this game in general? I feel like we need this one to be good for me for the weekend to go well, because if this is a blowout after Saturday, I think we could be relying purely on the NFC for a good weekend.
I think this might be a blowout. Yeah, I think obviously the Bills players, most of them had the week off last week, but the Broncos essentially had the week off as well, but with a win. And admittedly, Bo Nix has been looking good. Cortland Sutton's looked good all season, and then Marvin Mims has appeared this last month as well. So they definitely got a little bit more talent than we thought, but their run game's disappeared, which really doesn't help them. And then, like you say, the defense is great, but they do blitz a lot, and Josh Allen is the best quarterback in the league against the blitz. So it's probably not the best way to attack the Bills, and is the way they do like to attack. So yeah, getting Allen outside the pocket and getting him scramble is probably going to be a big part of this game. And we've seen in playoff runs before that Josh Allen, when it's needed, he will step up and he will run a lot. So I do like the Josh Allen rush yards. Obviously, we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, it should be. I think frankly, it is going to be a blowout. I checked the weather. It's cold, but it's going to be dry and not too windy, so there shouldn't be any effect there. And obviously, the Broncos are used to playing in the cold, so both these teams are used to the temperatures at least. I don't think the Broncos have got much chance. I think I'd probably have them a bigger spread than the Steelers are at the Ravens, to be honest. So yeah, I don't think, unfortunately, it's going to be the most entertaining game. And it is the 6 o'clock one, like you said. So at least we get that one out of the way, and then we get the NFC one starting later.
Yeah, it's going to have a lot of eyeballs because it's 6 o'clock, but I think the 9:30 will probably have a lot of interest, which we'll obviously talk about next. The other thing in terms of like how the game will look, obviously Pat Surtain's an incredible player for the Broncos. They base their whole defense around him. Their pass rush is pretty good as well, actually. But they base their whole defense around him. But if they're just going to put him on Amari Cooper the whole game, the Bills will love that because yes, it'll erase Amari Cooper, but they'll just throw to everyone else, which is what Josh Allen likes to do anyway. So yeah, I'm not sure the way they play defense is gonna help. The only thing in their favor is the Bills struggle with runs up the middle, and in terms of interior offensive line, the Chiefs 3 have had the best pass block and run block and win rate, but the Broncos are 3rd in both of those stats. So they are very good at running the ball up the middle if Sean Payton decides to stick with it, and that is a Bills' weakness. So I think if they can run the ball a lot, and Sean Payton's on his game, he's had an incredible season, helping Bo Nix look as good as he has, then there's a chance they could keep up. But I would be very worried that going into the third quarter, you could get a big Josh Allen play that puts the game 10, 14 points difference, and then that's it. And it's just not competitive. But we'll see. They've definitely got to start well if you're a Denver Broncos backer for them to have any chance. By the way, quarterbacks starting their first playoff game in the NFL have gone 14 for 21 against the spread since 2014, which is kind of when the seed started to change, and 27 to 47 all time against the spread since 2002, and that is a pretty damning sight if you're trying to back a rookie quarterback. And I think the other one was any rookie quarterback of a line of 6.5 points or more have just won 20 games in the history of the NFL, which is 20 for 123 straight up, and against the spread they're 28% as well. So not looking great for this game, but let's hope Sean Payton can work some magic. Cool. Let's go on to best bets then. Start with Tim's again. He's gone for under 47.5 in the total, which I think, to be honest, is probably a good shout. Denver have got a good defense, and I guess he's thinking rookie quarterback because the Bills' defense isn't great, but I assume he's thinking rookie quarterback there. And then also to follow on, he has put the Bills handicap as an extra one that he really likes. So as low as you can get it, 8.5 is as low as I can see it. But if you can get it lower than that, then Tim thinks that's a good selection as well. What's your best bet for Broncos at Bills?
As I mentioned, Josh Allen rush yards. I'm not going for yards because if they get quite far ahead, I think there's a chance he does rush a little less. So I've gone for his longest rush to be 13.5. He's got over that in, I think, 7 games this season, and they've all been in bigger, important games against better teams. So yeah, I think he can easily, as I say, with the blitzing, he is very good at escaping the blitz and dominating that game. So I think that's a decent one. I was just checking out Keon Coleman's touchdown as well because, as you kind of alluded to, with they wipe out Amari Cooper, then fine, just go for the other guy, go for the big guy against Riley Moss, and let him see Higgins in basically.
Yeah.
And it's 11-4 for Keon Coleman to score anytime, so that would be probably another one I'll be looking at in that game.
Cool. Yeah, we could talk about a lot of trends on this episode because it's playoffs and we're excited. But yeah, Kincaid as well. 30% of Josh Allen's throws against man coverage, which is all that Denver Broncos do. 30% of the throws go to Kincaid, which is the most in the team. So I think again, if you can find some Kincaid lines that you like, I think that's a good shout. What was he, sorry?
3-1 at Paddy Power.
Yeah, so that's a good. I think that's a good bet as well. To be honest, him and Coleman have scored a lot of touchdowns for Josh Allen in those situations. Cool. My bet for this game is I'm sticking with Josh Allen as well. I've gone for over 20.5 completions. I saw this tipped up at 21.5. I don't know why it's gone down, but you can get it at 20.5. I kind of think the Bills might have a big lead, and again, I do think they won't run him as much in that scenario, but like we keep mentioning, they play a lot of man coverage. They blitz a lot. Josh Allen throws against the blitz a lot. He completes a lot of passes against the blitz. And I just think this is the sort of game where he'll make a lot of throws down the field. I do think you probably want the Broncos to stay in touching distance in the first half for this bet because they will run James Cook a lot. But with a big game, if they're winning with a big game coming up next week, I still think we'll see Josh Allen throws to the backfield, Josh Allen screen passes, Josh Allen throwing in the red zone. So yeah, over 20.5 completions for me is my best bet for that game. Cool. Let's move on to the NFC then. Definitely the better games, I think, for the neutrals. The 9:30 game is Packers at Eagles. Eagles are favourite at home by 5.5 now, and the total is 45.5 again. But that actually keeps going up and down across the board wherever you do your bets. Obviously, Packers were red hot. I think they won 11 games in a row, and they hit 30 points as well, 7 times. The only team to do that, apart from the Lions. But then they lose that 2-point game to the Vikings, and then they have that terrible loss last week when they rested loads of people against Chicago, and now everyone seems to be backing the Eagles. They're the second favourite in terms of the most public money spent on a pick in the States this week. Matt LaFleur is 13-6 straight up and 15-3-1 against the spread as an underdog since he's been a head coach, which is really good. And the Eagles obviously have their quarterback in the concussion protocol, but he is officially practiced and back for this game. Jordan Love also had an injury in his back and practicing for this game as well. I'm personally quite excited for this game, mate. I think this could be the best game of the weekend as long as the injuries to the quarterbacks don't kind of rear as the game goes on. But how do you feel about this game? It's a good time, obviously, for us over here as well.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it should be the best game of the weekend. Should be an interesting one. Like you said, Love banged up is a bit of a worry. I don't think they allowed people to watch the sessions of him throwing the other day, so they're obviously a little bit of a worry around there. I've got no worry on Hurts. I think he probably could have come back last week, but they knew they weren't going to play him anyway, so why bother? So I don't think there's too much for us there. And obviously, Christian Watson going out for the season and possibly missing the start of next year is a bit of a painful one for them. Although they do move the ball around a lot, they do use Vontavian Wicks, Bo Melton, and I think the other guy. I was going to say Malik Harris, but that's definitely not right. The other guy got Jaden Reed, obviously is quite good, and then there was Malik Heath, I think is what I was after. He got a touchdown the other week as well. So they do fill in well when they have injuries at wide receiver. So I do think they'll be able to keep moving the ball if Watson's injury is all right. And obviously did he come back in the end last week? I know they were warming him up like they were going to when they thought they might lose.
Yeah,
I can't remember. Yeah, so I think they probably could have pushed him back in if they needed or if they wanted, but they chose against it. Obviously, the run game's been great for the Packers. And they don't just have Josh Jacobs. There's Emmanuel Wilson who's looked good as well as the backup. So they can probably move the ball there. But then you've got the Eagles on the other side, who I think are, well, probably second or third best team in, well, definitely in the NFC, obviously. They're second seed. But yeah, with Saquon, Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, they've got a good core there. And then Dallas Goedert had a bit of a run out last week. He should be fine as well this week. So yeah, I think it should be quite an interesting game. I am on the Eagles -5 as my bet for this week. I do think they are the better team by a fair distance, especially the way the season finished for the Packers. They seem to have died a bit of a death, to be honest. It seems like things aren't quite right there, and I think the Eagles can take advantage.
Any views on the obviously you like the Eagles? Any views on the total? Because I found this total really difficult to pick because I think you've got the injuries. You've got two teams that run the ball a lot, and then you've got the Eagles, who are the second worst first quarter team in the NFL, and then they just turn it on in the second half every single week. Like I couldn't pick a total either way, but I didn't know if you had an opinion on if you'd go over or under that number.
Maybe they need to start McKee this week because I think they scored 14 points in the first quarter last weck with him at quarterback. So maybe that's their way to go, is start him and then bring Jalen Hurts in for the rest of the game. Yeah, 45 is not exactly a high total, but like you said, both teams do like to run it, and with possible injuries at the quarterback, it could be more run heavy. So yeah, I'd probably lean over because it is a low total, but it is a bit risky.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's not one single 50 this week as well at the moment, at least on Sky. So yeah, I do think this total might be a bit higher, but I'm just worried about how much they're going to run it, which does lead me to my best bet. We mentioned yours, which is the Eagles spread. I've gone for the Josh Jacobs rushing attempts. So 16.5. Again, this was 18 in the States from the website that I use, and it's 16.5. You can get it on 3 different UK bookies. So I think it's a good bet. It is an elbow injury for Love. I do expect them to run it a lot. They run it a lot anyway. Josh Jacobs had a really good season. The Eagles are relatively good up front, but the Packers are pretty good up front as well. So I think they'll try and run it a lot and establish the run, especially with that injury and then Christian Watson going down as well. I just think we could see a sort of like run, play action pass type game plan for the Packers. And if he starts the game well and he's getting 5-6 yards of carry, then I think you'll hit this easy because they'll keep running him. Your only worry is if he starts poorly and they get 14-0 down, then you're a bit worried. But I think he's played really well this season, and I think the Packers will keep running him a lot. And then, for Tim's best bet, he's gone for an AJ Brown under 84.5 receiving yards. He is a bit banged up. They just put Devonta Smith on the injury report today as well. But AJ Brown is a bit banged up. You've obviously got a quarterback there with concussion that we don't know how he's going to play coming off that injury. And they've been very up and down all year. They've either had a 60-yard touchdown pass, or they've had 3 quarters in a row where AJ Brown doesn't see the ball and he's screaming at the coaches. So I feel like this will be the type of bet where after the first quarter, you're either like, oh no, he's got 50 yards already. Or Tim will be sat at home saying AJ Brown's smashing helmets on the sideline and had no catches. So I think it's a pretty good shout because you get the chance he starts the game and then he has to come out with his injury. But I would just be a bit worried the fact the Packers have not got many corners that can cover anyone good, let alone someone great like AJ Brown. But I could see why Tim's thinking it. You got any thoughts on that under?
Yeah, not one I'd be going with. It is quite a high line, like you said. I didn't realise he'd been on the injury report, so I'll have to make a note of that. But like you said, he's the passing offense for the Eagles always seems quite volatile. Him and Devonta Smith can either have 6 yards or they can have 150. So it's not one I normally like to target on either way. I did like the rush attempts on all the running guys in this one. I did have a little note. There was Saquon or Josh Jacobs. Saquon's 20.5 rush attempts. So I wasn't going near that one. But Josh Jacobs, I'm sure it was 17.5 earlier on 365, but I just checked now it's 16.5. So the same line that you said. And in theory he should get it. They have been running him into the ground this year, and he's been doing well with it. So why not? Yeah,
and they rested him last week, I think, as well. So he should be fresher than he is normally. I wouldn't even mind I don't know what the line is. So I'm talking just ballpark. But the Emmanuel Wilson, he gets more carries than you think. Again, is that because they're resting Jacobs a bit, and now in the playoffs they're just going to go all Jacobs? I'm not sure, but I can't imagine his line is very high if Jacobs' line is only 16.5 for Emmanuel Wilson.
I was looking for it. 365. We've only got Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs. So obviously I'm not going to take the Jordan Love one because Neil's count. For the record, he's 1.5. So if you think the Packers are going to win and then kneel it out, then that's probably going to be 3 straight away. But yeah, not one for me on that one. Yeah, if you can find Emmanuel Wilson, probably what 4.5, 5.5. I'd probably take the over on that.
Yeah, probably. I'd imagine it's that line. Cool. So yeah, to go through it again, Adams is Eagles -4.5, which is the best line you can get. But yeah, 5.5 in places. I've gone for Josh Jacobs over 16.5 rushing attempts. Make sure you shop around because there are 17.5s out there, like we said. And Tim's gone for AJ Brown under 84.5 receiving yards. Again, he is slightly injured, so there's a chance he might miss the game, but he did come back to practice limited today, so I'd imagine he plays, and you don't get a void on that one. Cool. Let's go on to the late game then on Sunday. One of these teams I don't think a lot of people thought would be in the playoffs, but they're here, and that is the Commanders at the Buccaneers. Bucks are now favored by 3.5. The line started at 2.5 last week, but it's been bet up to 3.5. The total is actually the biggest of the week, 49.5. Obviously, two very kind of high-powered offenses, but also pretty bad defenses overall when you look at all the numbers. So this should be an exciting game. And in general, this is the matchup that has the most upsets. So the 3-6 matchup has the road teams 14-8 straight up. So the road team, the 6 beats the 3 more times than they lose, which is surprising. And against the spread, 17-5, which is 77%, which is really, really good for this matchup. So we could see an exciting high-scoring game in this one. I think that's where I'm kind of sitting, mate, is I don't think either defenses are going to be able to stop them. I think it'll just be, can the team score in the red zone when they get down there, and can the quarterbacks make sure they keep hold of it? How do you feel about this game? Because I'm quite excited. I think it could be a good one.
Yeah. Like you've said it all, really. It's it should be quite an exciting one. Brian Robinson hasn't been running too well for the Commanders, though, which is a bit of a worry. But they do have Austin Eckler back. He came back last week after being concussed for quite a while. So that at least adds a different kind of aspect to their run game, mainly in the passing for them. But he is a decent runner when he can as well. So that definitely helps the Commanders. And then you've got Jaden Daniels, obviously a great runner as well. So they should be able to move the ball there. And then Terry McLaurin and Olamide Zacchaeus has suddenly appeared from somewhere over the last few weeks as well. So they've at least got someone else to help out McLaurin and Zacchaeus, who've been doing most of the lifting in the passing game. Bucks defense has been good, very good against the run, as always. Vita Vea is still a beast in the middle of that line. It'll be interesting to see how the Commanders deal with that. I do like the Commanders getting 3.5, if that's the line now. That is a very nice line over the 3 there. The Bucks, though, on the other side, they've obviously been really good this year. They've got off to a quick start in every game, and they do like to take the ball as well. So if you're looking for Bucks bets, you're probably worth looking for first quarter or first to 5 points or something similar, and see if you can get anything around even money on the Bucks on that one. Because the Commanders will probably defer, and the Bucks can or have been known to take the ball, which not many teams do. Baker Mayfield's been really good. Obviously, they started slow last week, but that's against the Saints is always a weird one for them against that team. And then obviously Mike Evans has been really good, but he is probably going to be facing Marshall Lattimore this week, which is his kryptonite as well. Yeah. See if he steals any chains this week. But yeah, Lattimore versus Evans. They've had 13 games. Evans has had 0 receptions in 5 of them. And he's had 305 yards in those 13 games, and 150 of them came in 1 game. So it's safe to say Lattimore knows how to deal with Mike Evans, and if you're the Commanders, then just leave them together. And to be fair, I'd imagine half those games, well, at least a quarter of those games, I don't think either of them finished the game because
they get kicked out. Yeah, I was going to say,
yeah. So Evans under 76 yards, I don't mind. And then because of that, McMillan over 52.5 yards. He's obviously been really good the last month of the season. He's gone over 51 in all of his last 5 games. So that's a decent line for him. And then you've got Bucky Irvin, who's taken over the main role in the run game. He's ahead of Rashard White now. I think his rush line was 86ish, so I didn't want to take that, but you can get over 3.5 receptions for him. Baker Mayfield is the second most yards on dump off this year, and a lot of them been to Bucky Irvin and Rashard White. So if you think Bucky's taking the lead, which I think, then that's a decent one. In terms of result, I'd be taking Commanders for 3.5. and hopefully the overs. Obviously, it's the 1/2 game over here, so it'd be nice to have something to keep people awake.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, ironically you've just mentioned the other two people's picks best bets there. So I have picked Commanders plus three and a
I
half.
missed
So I'm
that.
glad. So I'm glad you like. I'm glad you agree with me. And Tim has picked over 50. Well, it's 50 and a half is the line he's got. You can get 49 and a half on Sky. So again, if you want the over, go to Sky because they've got 49 and a half. So it's slightly better than the 50 and a half. But yeah, that's our two best bets. So we're glad we got Adam on side. The only other ones I'll mention is two interesting stats is that the Commanders are the second worst team in the NFL against passes to the running backs. So any of these
Okay.
Rashad White, Bucky Irving receptions lines, I think Bucky Irving was 20 and a half total receiving yards. Again, he is a bit boom or bust. He might have one where he tries to beat everyone and he runs back 5-10 yards. That happened a couple of weeks ago. But in general, this is a good matchup against Dan Quinn defenses when you can get the ball to the running backs. And on the other side, the Bucks are the second worst defense in the NFL against scrambling quarterbacks. And Jane Daniels had more scrambles this year than any quarterback in the history of the NFL. So I would be looking for Jane Daniels over in rushing yards and even rush attempts if you can get it. Scrambles do count as long as they get past the 5-yard line. So I'd be looking for those as well. We mentioned our two best bets. What's your best bet for this one?
I've gone with Austin Eckler over 2.5 receptions. As I say, it's a low line, and I do think that they're going to use him quite a bit in this game. I was just having a quick nose at yards. He's 19.5 yards, if you prefer that side of it. So basically, receiving yards for running backs is where we're looking in this one by the sound of it. The only thing that worries me with the Bucks is they do have a weird propensity to not go with the main guy in the receiving one. Like I had 1 week where Rashad White was the main person, and then Bucky Irving had 6.5. I had 7 receptions, and then I've had a week where Bucky Irving's leading the line and Rashad White gets 5. So it is a little bit of an annoying one. Rashad White, by the way, is 1.5 receptions, at 2 to 3, so 4 to 6. So not great, but it's 2 catches. I'd prefer the Bucky Irving at plus money, 13 to 10. And then, as I said, Jalen McMillan as well, over 4.5 receptions is 23 to 20. But yeah, my best bet for this one, as I say, is Austin Eckler over 2.5 receptions.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a good shout, and I think this is a game where we can win some player props with how many points I think there could be in this one. So yeah, to clarify again, Tim over 50.5 in that game, you can get 49.5. So shop around. I've gone for Commanders plus 3.5 to go with that trend of the 6 covering the spread against the 3 seed, and then Adam's gone for Eckler over 2.5 receptions plus money as well, which is a really good pick. Cool. Last but not least, then the Monday night game. I'm still annoyed. I prefer the 3 and 3. I prefer 3 Saturday, 3 Sunday. But hey, we've got a Monday night game. This game's quite fun, especially for me as someone who loves the Rams more than they should. The Vikings at the Rams. Vikings are favored on the road, so we've got another home underdog here, which we spoke about earlier with the good record against the spread. And then the total is 47.5. I actually thought the total might be a little bit higher than that, but the Rams offense has struggled since they scored loads of points against the Bills. They've really, really struggled. People are really shying away from the Vikings, though. They've had not as much public money as you'd think. Obviously, Sam Darnold had 3 bad quarters last week and missed those at red zone. It was the 3rd worst red zone performance from any offense in the league. So yeah, people are not betting on them as much as they probably would have if he would have found a way to at least look good in that game. And then one stat I found interesting, the Vikings' second most turnovers forced in the league, and teams that force 2+ turnovers in any game in the wildcard weekend are 62.5% against the spread. So if you can force your opponent to have 2 turnovers or more, you're more than likely going to cover the spread, and the Vikings love to force turnovers, which I thought was an interesting stat. How are you feeling about this game? The Rams haven't looked great recently. Vikings have looked great for like 9 weeks in a row, and then all of a sudden the offense lays an egg in the biggest game of the season. How are you feeling about how this game could look?
Unders really. Obviously, the game's in Arizona now because of the fires in Los Angeles. So they're kind of both on the road, and it's going to be more disruptive for the Rams because they've been struggling to train this week because they're quite close to where things are. So it's going to be a bit of a mix-up a bit of a muddled preparation, although they did rest most of their guys last week, so you would expect they've been planning quite well. They knew roughly who they're going to be facing, so yeah, it should be an interesting one. Like you said, the Rams have fallen off completely over the last month of the season. They cost me one of my leagues with Stafford, Cup, and Kyron Williams all doing very little in the final game. Obviously, Cup has disappeared. Not quite sure what's gone on there. Puka Nakua gets everything. Even Demarcus Robinson's getting a little bit more than Cooper Cup at the moment. Kyron Williams has been running well all season, but he's not a big body back, and maybe that's taken its toll a bit as well. So it'll be interesting. Obviously, I like the Rams. We're a Rams positive podcast, and we do both like them. But I do think the Vikings are the side to be on here. It was Pick'em when it was at the Rams earlier in the week. It's now -2.5, so it does kind of make sense with the way that line's gone. I think the Vikings will bounce back from what they did. Obviously, we know Darnold kind of hit or miss, but he has been very good this year, and they are a very well coached team. Obviously, Kevin O'Connell should probably win Coach of the Year, and they've got a great defense. So I do think that they are the better team in this one. I do think that the Vikings are going to win.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if what that move to Arizona does to the game. I have a bad suspicion it can make the game worse because it's kind of mucked up the Rams' preparation a little bit, and the Vikings can then play a bit of ball control. But we'll see. I'm hoping for a fun, exciting game because I do like Kevin O'Connell's offense, and the Vikings' defense is mental. And the Rams, when they get going, are very good. It's just they haven't got going since that Bills game, whatever it was, 4 or 5 weeks ago. And they played earlier in the season as well, and it was Stafford versus Flores, basically, just constantly blitzing him. And Stafford was either negative play or big play. So I'm hoping this game should be quite a fun one for neutrals. But I don't know if we even are neutrals. We might just be Rams at this point, but we'll see. That's why I tried to stay away from the Rams positive bets. But Tim, our fearless leader, has not stayed away from Rams positive bets. His best bet is Rams +3. Again, I don't know if I think he's buying that up to the 3 because I can't find 3 anywhere. But if you do shop around and find a 3, Tim has gone for Rams +3. Judging by all of his selections, I don't think he's a Vikings believer because he's also likes Cup over 4.5 receptions, Cup over 49.5 receiving yards. He likes Puka Nakua over 88 receiving yards, and he likes Stafford over 240 passing yards. So they are very, very pro Rams bets. So Tim thinks we're getting points. We're getting Stafford scoring loads of points, and we're getting the Rams covering the spread. So yeah, we are still pro Rams on this game. What's your best bet? I think you've got Rams as well, haven't you?
I've gone pro Rams as well. Yeah, Tutu Atwell, longest reception over 8.5 yards. When he makes a catch, he has gone over that in all but 2 of his games. Now, admittedly, to be fair, he's had a lot of catches this year. He's only had 2 games without a catch. So in 14 or 13 of their games, he's got over that line. So I think that's a low line. He has started getting a few more end arounds and a few more shorter ones that they're trying to get him to take, but he is a deep threat as well. And as I say, their passing game hasn't been great recently. Cup has disappeared, so I won't be surprised if Tutu Atwell gets the odd target. And if he gets 1 reception, I'd be fairly confident it's going to be more than 9 yards down the field.
Yeah, they like him big plays against man coverage. Stafford seems to like throwing it to him in those situations. So, yeah, I think that's good. I'm surprised the line's as low as that, but I think it's because of the odd week where he gets no targets. It's probably the reason why they've been conservative with that one. Cool. I've gone for a Vikings bet because can't all be pro Rams, and I want the Rams to win in my heart. So when I watch it, I want the Rams to win. So I've gone for the Vikings over 23.5. You have to buy this down at 4 to 6. It was 24.5 the line. I just checked. It's moved up to 25.5. So you have to get the alternate to find 23.5. But Virgin Bet does have it. I think Betway had it as well. I do think the Vikings will score 24 points against the Rams defense. The Rams are still very young. They do have Jared Verse, who's had an incredible season, but they're not as good stout up the middle. So I think the Vikings will probably run it quite well with Aaron Jones. And again, those young corners and not as very good secondary, I think are going to struggle to cover the Vikings' weapons. So I do think the Vikings will score points. The line only came down because of how bad the Vikings looked last week, and it looks like people have bet bet the line back up. But yeah, like I said, if you get the alternative line 23.5, I like. I don't hate 25.5 because I think if they win, they probably do score 27. So if you do think the Vikings win, then I think that's a good bet as well. But yeah, I just don't think the Rams secondary can hold up against the Vikings. I think if you want the Rams to win, you need 30 plus points. So yeah, I've gone for the Vikings.
Yeah, by EPA, the Rams are the worst defense in the playoffs and the third worst offense in the playoffs. So yeah, I think it should be high scoring from the Vikings by the look of it there.
Yeah, it should be, as long as we don't get the Darnold. I think it's 4 red zone trips, no TDs. But yeah, we'll see. Cool. Summarise then that game. Tim's gone for Rams +3, brought the line up to the field goal. I've gone for Vikings over 23.5 points, but I still like it at 25.5 if that's the line you have to get now. And Adam's gone for Tutu Atwell, longest reception of over 8.5 receiving yards. Who do you think is going to win that game, by the way? We didn't mention it. Do you think it will be the Vikings?
Yeah, I'm fine with Vikings -2.5 on the spread. I think that's an acceptable one.
Yeah, I think it makes it more fun with Vikings maybe well, depends who wins the Eagles game, but at Lions the week after. I'd be a bit worried that the Rams, even though I would love to see Stafford Goff again, I'd be a bit worried the Lions could kill them in that game. Whereas I think Vikings Lions should be entertaining if that does happen. Cool. Anything else you want to mention? Aaron Jones anytime touchdown, by the way, plus odds. I thought that was a good bet in that game. That was the only other bet I had written down for the weekend. Was there anything else that you had that you were looking at?
No, to be honest, I didn't look at touchdowns in that final game, despite the fact that we do think it's going to be a high scoring game. So yeah, I'd probably try and find it. Basically, I'm going to go on tight ends because they always have around 2-1, 3-1 odds for the main tight end even. So I'll probably be going through a few of them this weekend. I will mention my picks contest though for the playoffs. Touchdowntips.com. The info's on there. 25 quid entry and winner takes all. Pick each game against the spread and pick the total on each. And it's just the most points come the end of the playoffs. So we'll get mentioned for that in before we shoot off.
I also need to join that as well. So there we go. I'll be doing that before. Because I only lost our full 10 yards pick contest because I didn't put any scores in for week 11. I had 0 week, and if I'd have just got 3, I would have won. So yeah, I'll make sure I put my picks in for yours before the game. But that's it. I'm not going to recap all the picks. There's far too many picks. So what we'll do is we'll tweet out the. I'll ask Adam kindly live, so he can't say no, to tweet out the selections that we've put together. Please remember to follow us at Full 10 Yards as well. It really does help on Twitter/X. Make sure you do like and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify as well. That does help us get noticed by more people. We'll be back for the divisional weekend, which some people think is the best weekend of the season. Remember to gamble responsibly, and also, please follow Adam at Touchdown Tips for any other bets. I'm sure there'll be an obscure double tight end bet for like 100 to 1 that nearly comes in that Adam will be able to find. So please go follow.
We'll get there.
But thanks for listening, everyone, and enjoy the weekend. We will speak to you soon.